Hi guys, welcome to Flick Finesse. This time we've gathered the top 14 best thriller movies, currently streaming in July 2025 on Netflix, Prime Video, AMC Plus, and Tubi. You'll find both hidden gems and popular favorites in this list, so there's something exciting for every thriller lover. We hope you enjoy the picks. Now let's jump straight into the countdown. Number 14. Angel of Mine. Angel of Mine, directed by Kim Farrant, is a haunting psychological thriller that explores the unraveling of grief, motherhood, and obsession. The story follows Lizzie, a woman shattered by the tragic death of her infant daughter years earlier. When she catches a glimpse of a young girl who bears an uncanny resemblance to her lost child, she becomes convinced the girl is actually hers. What begins as quiet curiosity soon spirals into invasive behavior as Lizzie's fragile grip on reality crumbles under the weight of her grief and fixation. The mystery unfolds in a suburban setting, making the psychological stakes feel unnervingly close to home. Noomi Rapace delivers a raw, deeply committed performance that anchors the film's emotional core. Her portrayal of Lizzie is complex, both sympathetic and unsettling, as she navigates denial, desperation, and a mother's unrelenting love. Opposite her, Yvonne Strahovski gives a grounded and vulnerable turn as the mother of the child in question, adding tension to every interaction. The supporting cast, including Luke Evans, enhances the claustrophobic, emotional atmosphere without distracting from the central conflict. Deliberate in its pacing and restrained in its style, Angel of Mine trades jump scares for psychological unease. While not for fans of fast-paced thrillers, it rewards patient viewers with a gripping final act and a quietly devastating payoff. Number 13. Rentipal. Rentipal, directed by John Stevenson, is a slow-burning psychological thriller that blends retro nostalgia with disturbing commentary on loneliness, mental health, and artificial intimacy. Set in 1990, the film follows David, a socially awkward bachelor struggling to care for his ailing mother while seeking companionship through a video dating service. When he discovers a mysterious VHS tape titled Rentipal, featuring a seemingly friendly host named Andy, David finds unexpected comfort in the illusion of conversation. But as his dependency on the tape deepens, what starts as a benign connection gradually warps into a sinister psychological spiral. Brian Landis Fokins delivers a quietly devastating performance as David, timid, vulnerable, and increasingly unhinged. He captures the aching isolation of a man desperate for connection. Opposite him, Will Wheaton is disturbingly charming as Andy, playing the tape's host with unsettling cheerfulness that turns menacing without ever breaking his smile. The subtle interplay between these two, despite one being pre-recorded, is where the film draws its unsettling power. Tense, tragic, and uncomfortably intimate, Rentipal is less about jump scares and more about emotional horror. Number 12. Contra. Contra, directed by Xavier Cardas, is a visceral and tightly crafted Mexican action thriller that blends gritty realism with emotional intensity. Known for his dynamic storytelling, Cardas delivers a grounded yet pulse-pounding narrative that explores the cost of duty, loyalty, and sacrifice in a country ravaged by cartel violence and moral ambiguity. The film follows Captain Guerrero, a seasoned leader of an elite special ops unit who finds himself ambushed during a rescue mission gone wrong. As his team is hunted by a ruthless cartel deep in hostile territory, Guerrero must navigate betrayal, survival, and the psychological toll of war, all while protecting innocent lives. The tension builds in real time, immersing viewers in a deadly game of strategy and survival against overwhelming odds. Luis Alberti commands the screen as Guerrero, delivering a performance filled with grit, restraint, and inner turmoil. His stoic presence is balanced by strong supporting turns from Noe Hernandez as a chilling cartel leader and Mayra Batalla as a civilian whose courage adds emotional weight to the chaos. Together, they create a cast that feels grounded in reality, lending the film a sense of urgency and human vulnerability. Stripped of excess and packed into a lean 85-minute runtime, Contra trades spectacle for sharp pacing, hard-hitting action, and raw authenticity. It's not just a war against the cartel, it's a war for redemption, dignity, and the soul of a nation. Number 11. Brooklyn's Finest. Brooklyn's Finest, directed by Amc Tubi, is a hard-edged, morally complex crime thriller that plunges deep into the shadows of New York's most unforgiving borough. The film interlocks the lives of three troubled NYPD officers: Eddie, a burned-out veteran days from retirement; Tango, an undercover cop torn between loyalty and betrayal; and Sal, a narcotics officer driven to the edge by financial strain and personal demons. As their separate paths move toward an inevitable collision, each man is forced to make devastating choices in a system that blurs the line between justice and survival. The ensemble cast is one of the film's strongest assets. Richard Gere brings quiet sadness and weariness to Eddie, while Don Cheadle delivers an intense, layered performance as Tango, caught in a dangerous double life. Ethan Hawke adds raw desperation to Sal, portraying a man pushed beyond his moral limits. Supporting performances from Wesley Snipes and Vincent D'Onofrio further ground the film in authenticity and danger. Brooklyn's Finest doesn't romanticize law enforcement or glorify violence. It's bleak, atmospheric, and often brutal, with a simmering tension that builds toward a tragic crescendo. Number 10. A Classic Horror Story. A Classic Horror Story, directed by Roberto De Feo and Paolo Stripoli, is a self-aware and visually haunting horror thriller that cleverly dissects genre conventions while delivering a tense and atmospheric ride. The story follows five strangers on a road trip through remote southern Italy, whose journey takes a terrifying turn when their camper crashes and strands them in a dense, unmarked forest. Surrounded by eerie silence and folk imagery, they stumble upon a mysterious wooden cabin tied to a local legend. But as the line between staged horror and terrifying reality begins to blur, the group realizes they're not just victims in a traditional slasher, they're pawns in a story with chilling intent. Matilda Lutz leads the film with quiet strength as Elisa, a woman caught between vulnerability and resistance in an increasingly surreal nightmare. Her grounded performance becomes the emotional anchor as the film transitions from folk horror to meta-commentary. Supporting roles from Francesco Russo and Will Merrick add tension and suspicion, though the true antagonist may not be the cult outside, but the narrative machine they're trapped in. Stylish, blood-soaked, and thematically bold, A Classic Horror Story challenges the conventions it borrows from. Rather than simply paying tribute to horror's past, it critiques the genre's obsession with suffering and spectacle. Number 9. Maniac. Maniac, directed by Frank Calhoun, is a bold and psychologically intense horror thriller that immerses the viewer in the fractured mind of a serial killer. It's a chilling reimagining of the 1980 cult slasher, transformed into a harrowing character study about loneliness, trauma, and the monstrous side of obsession. The film follows Frank Zito, a reclusive mannequin restorer haunted by childhood abuse and driven by violent urges. By day, he fixes vintage mannequins in a decaying workshop. By night, he stalks and murders women, preserving fragments of them in grotesque artistic displays. But when he meets Anna, a kind-hearted photographer who shows him compassion, Frank's fragile psyche begins to crack further, blurring the line between connection and delusion. Elijah Wood delivers a haunting and unconventional performance as Frank, relying mostly on voice and reflection to express a deeply broken man. His portrayal is unsettling in its quietness, charming, even gentle, while hiding a horrific undercurrent. Nora Arnezeder brings warmth and light to the role of Anna, making her presence a painful contrast to the violence surrounding her. Slickly shot and drenched in synth-heavy atmosphere, Maniac is both stylish and deeply disturbing. The use of POV isn't just a gimmick, it forces viewers to inhabit the mind of the killer, creating a sense of complicity that's as fascinating as it is uncomfortable. Number 8. Pride and Glory. Pride and Glory, directed by Gavin O'Connor, is a gritty and emotionally charged crime drama that dives into the corrupt underbelly of the NYPD. Known for his interest in fractured families and moral conflict, O'Connor crafts a story steeped in loyalty, betrayal, and the complicated bonds between brothers, both by blood and by badge. The film centers on Ray Tierney, a morally conflicted detective assigned to investigate a brutal ambush that leaves 4 officers dead. As he digs deeper, Ray uncovers evidence that suggests his own brother-in-law, Jimmy Egan, may be involved in police corruption tied to the murders. What follows is a tense unraveling of secrets and loyalties, as Ray is forced to choose between protecting his family or exposing the rot within the force. Edward Norton leads the cast with a restrained but deeply internalized performance, portraying Ray as a man pulled between duty and blood. Colin Farrell is equally compelling as Jimmy, whose charm masks a volatile, morally decaying soul. Jon Voight adds weight as the family patriarch and ranking officer, embodying the generational burden of institutional loyalty. The ensemble's chemistry is palpable, lending authenticity to the emotional stakes. Gritty in both tone and texture, Pride and Glory captures the moral weight of its characters' choices through handheld camera work and a cold, urban atmosphere. Fans of morally conflicted crime thrillers like The Departed or We Own the Night will find Pride and Glory a brooding and compelling watch. Number 7. The Hills Have Eyes. The Hills Have Eyes, directed by Alexandre Aja, is a brutal and unrelenting horror thriller that reimagines Wes Craven's 1977 cult classic with modern savagery and psychological terror. The film follows the Carter family, a typical American unit on a road trip through the desert, who take a wrong turn and find themselves stranded in a desolate nuclear testing zone. Unbeknownst to them, the area is inhabited by a clan of deformed, cannibalistic mutants, victims of Cold War-era radiation, who stalk and terrorize the family in a nightmarish battle for survival. What begins as a vacation quickly devolves into primal warfare. Ted Levine and Kathleen Quinlan ground the film as the Carter parents, bringing warmth and realism to a family pushed to the brink. Émilie de Ravin, especially as their characters evolve from helpless victims into desperate survivors. The monstrous antagonists, led by terrifying performances under heavy prosthetics, are grotesque yet disturbingly human, making the threat all the more chilling. Grim, gory, and unflinching, The Hills Have Eyes doesn't shy away from violence, but its true horror lies in how it strips its characters of comfort, morality, and civility. Aja's direction is tight and unrelenting, creating a suffocating atmosphere that keeps the tension high throughout. Number 6. 13 Bombs. 13 Bombs, directed by Onyeduima Sosonko, is a tense and socially charged action thriller that fuses real-time suspense with a sharp critique of digital capitalism and class disparity. The story kicks off with a chilling ultimatum. 13 bombs are planted across the city, and unless an enormous ransom is paid via a newly launched cryptocurrency platform, they will detonate. When the tech startup behind the platform is linked to the threat, 2 of its founders, William and Oscar, find themselves caught between terrorists, law enforcement, and a ticking clock. What follows is a frantic unraveling of truth, paranoia, and power in a city teetering on collapse. Ardito Permono and Chico Kurniawan lead the cast with anxious energy, portraying unlikely protagonists thrust into a high-stakes conspiracy far beyond their control. Meanwhile, Mohammed Khan and Ganindra Bhimo add weight and authority to the film's counter-terrorism efforts, grounding the more explosive moments in emotional realism. Number 5. Mystery Road. Mystery Road, directed by Even Sen, is a brooding and atmospheric outback noir that blends the starkness of a western with the complexity of a modern crime thriller. At the heart of the film is Jay Swan, an indigenous detective newly returned to his hometown, tasked with solving the murder of a young Aboriginal girl found discarded in a roadside culvert. As Jay follows a trail of evasions, uneasy glances, and buried secrets, he finds himself caught between two worlds, neither fully trusted by the white police force nor embraced by his own community. What unfolds is less a whodunit and more a character-driven reckoning with the silent forces that divide a town. Aaron Pedersen gives a quietly magnetic performance as Jay, embodying calm resilience and internal conflict. His every pause and measured line delivery speaks volumes, anchoring the film in emotional realism. He's joined by Hugo Weaving, whose enigmatic presence simmering tension as a fellow officer who may know more than he lets on. Visually spare and thematically weighty, Mystery Road thrives on its sense of place and moral ambiguity. It unfolds with patience, favoring long silences and barren landscapes over conventional thrills. Number 4. Strange But True. Strange But True, directed by Rowan Athale, is a somber and intricately woven mystery thriller that explores grief, secrets, and the fragile line between belief and reality. The story begins 5 years after the sudden death of a teenage boy named Ronnie. When his former girlfriend Melissa returns, claiming she's pregnant with his child, Ronnie's fractured family is forced to reopen wounds they've long buried. As the mystery of Melissa's claim deepens, so too does the family's descent into long-held guilt, suspicion, and the dangerous consequences of denial. Margaret Qualley delivers a gentle yet unsettling performance as Melissa, balancing innocence with cryptic unease. Opposite her, Nick Robinson plays Ronnie's grieving brother with understated intensity, while Amy Ryan and Greg Kinnear give strong, emotionally charged turns as the parents grappling with impossible revelations. The supporting cast, including Brian Cox and Blythe Danner, adds gravitas and intrigue. For fans of psychological mysteries tinged with tragedy, it's a subtle, emotionally resonant tale of how the past refuses to stay buried. Number 3. Captain Phillips. Captain Phillips, directed by Paul Greengrass, is a gripping, high-stakes thriller that combines intense realism with emotional depth, grounded in a real-life maritime hijacking. The film follows Richard Phillips, captain of the cargo ship Maersk Alabama, whose routine voyage is upended when Somali pirates board the vessel and take him hostage. As negotiations spiral and the situation becomes increasingly volatile, Phillips must remain composed under pressure, while U.S. naval forces race to resolve the standoff. What begins as a hostage scenario becomes a psychological chess match between captor and captive, played out in claustrophobic spaces and under global scrutiny. Tom Hanks delivers one of the most powerful performances of his career, portraying Captain Phillips with a mix of stoic professionalism and simmering fear. His final scenes, in particular, are devastating in their emotional authenticity. Barkhad Abdi is equally riveting in his breakout role as Muse, the pirate leader, bringing complexity and desperation to a character who might have otherwise been a one-dimensional villain. With kinetic camera work, escalating tension, and an unflinching commitment to realism, Captain Phillips is more than just a thriller. It's a study in resilience, leadership, and the blurred lines between heroism and survival. Number 2. In Order of Disappearance. In Order of Disappearance, directed by Hans Petter Moland, is a darkly comic revenge thriller that blends stoic Nordic cool with bursts of brutal violence and a dry sense of absurdity. The story follows Nils Dickman, a quiet, mild-mannered snowplow driver whose world shatters when his son is found dead from a supposed overdose. Refusing to accept the official story, Nils uncovers a criminal conspiracy involving drug dealers and begins methodically taking out the men responsible, one body at a time. His rampage inadvertently sparks a gang war between Serbian mobsters and a flamboyantly petty Norwegian drug lord, turning Niels's personal vendetta into a bloodbath of escalating absurdity. Stellan Skarsgård is superb as Niels, delivering a deadpan, quietly menacing performance that anchors the film's icy tone. His stoicism contrasts hilariously with the increasing chaos he causes, and his character becomes a sort of accidental angel of death. The supporting cast, especially Paul Sverre Hagen as the vegan narcissistic drug boss known as the Count, brings colorful eccentricity and unpredictable tension to the story. Stylish, violent, and laced with pitch-black humor, In Order of Disappearance isn't your typical revenge movie. It's a Scandinavian cocktail of Coen brothers' sensibility and Taken-like grit. Number 1. Revenge. Revenge, directed by Coralie Fargiat, is a savage and hyper-stylized survival thriller that injects fresh blood and feminist fury into a genre long overdue for subversion. The story follows Jen, a carefree young woman enjoying a secluded desert getaway with her wealthy boyfriend. But when his hunting buddies arrive, the mood shifts from pleasure to threat, culminating in a brutal assault and a shocking betrayal. Left for dead in the middle of nowhere, Jen doesn't just survive, she transforms, setting out on a relentless, blood-soaked path of vengeance that pits her against the men who underestimated her. Matilda Lutz gives a fearless performance as Jen, embodying a transformation that's both physical and mythic. As her body is pushed to near death and rebirth, Lutz navigates the journey with grit, pain, and rising fury, making Jen's evolution from victim to avenger both believable and symbolic. The antagonists, grotesque in their entitlement and cowardice, are written with just enough dimension to reflect real-world dynamics while fueling the film's brutal justice. Drenched in color, blood, and synth-heavy sound design, Revenge is a fever dream of violence and reclamation. It's not just a survival story, it's a visceral act of cinematic catharsis. For fans of bold, uncompromising thrillers, Revenge is a feral, unforgettable scream.